All right, well, I was at the gym. I was watching this video on entry level jobs, and the fact that they don't really exist anymore made me curious as to how ChatGPT would respond to something like this. So I asked ChatGPT, how do I get an entry level minimum wage job? Getting an entry level job is generally straightforward, as these roles typically require little to no prior experience. Here's a step by step guide to help you land one, right? Well, I put into the system a title that it generated, which was The Truth of Minimum Wage Jobs. And then it comes back. The first thing it says, it rewrites the title for this story and it calls it Why the Minimum Wage Jobs Are Harder to Get Than You Think. First, it says it's easy, then it tells me they're too hard to get. So I'm not exactly certain what's going on here, what shenanigans are going on, but obviously it's not that easy. I have people that I know that have been searching for any job for over 6 months and haven't been able to find a job. And there are people who are losing their higher level jobs, senior level jobs, and are having to look for jobs at the minimum wage because they can't find anything. In fact, today I watched another video that clearly shows that we are moving closer and closer to a true depression, not just recession, depression, because people aren't getting jobs and the jobs that we currently have don't pay the bills. So to me, the minimum requirements to call something a job is it has to be able to pay your rent, pay your grocery bill, which is, groceries have become a luxury most of us can't afford anymore, and it has to be able to pay for your promobile. That to me is what a job does. Anything that doesn't meet that requirement is straight up slavery. So, with that said, let's get into the story that it created about how to get an entry level job. Hi, I'm Jess. I'm 24, broke, and I'm tired. I've been living paycheck to paycheck, scrambling to find jobs that barely cover my rent. If you've ever felt invisible, like no one cares if you're drowning in bills, this video is for you. Because I've learned some hard truths about the minimum wage jobs, and I'm going to tell you exactly how to get hired fast. Tell me more. You think finding a minimum wage job would be easy, right? Wrong. Here's the truth. They're not just looking for anyone. Employers want someone who will work hard, keep quiet, and ask for nothing extra, but they'll never tell you that. I have been telling you guys this for years. The ideal worker has no mouth because they don't want someone who's going to speak out. They don't want someone that needs to eat every day. And they don't want someone who's going to come to work and complain about the toxic work environment. They want someone who will just shut up, work as hard as they can until they burn out, and then they're going to hire the next desperation worker. How do I know this? Because that's me. That's how they found me for this job. My boss wasn't honest about what the job was. It took him months later to admit that he had to trick me into taking this low level job and hope that I would stay. It's like throwing something against a wall and hoping it will stick. Because for the most part, as the president of my department once said in a phone call with the vendor, we have high turnover. I was like, really? In fact, I was watching another video today that they talked about retention is not in the cards for most corporations right now. Attrition is. Rather than investing money in retaining workers with halfway decent benefits and a living wage, they're counting on people leaving. The attrition is baked right into the system. And I heard this at work from one of the accounting people one time. I was down the street at another office and I'm sitting there, repairing some network problems that we were having at that site. And I'm typing away at the computer, looking at stuff, and then I hear one of the executives talking to a new flunky, right? And he's like, here at this corporation, we're all about the attrition. We don't want anyone staying in these positions because people who stay in positions have a tendency to want more out of these entry level jobs. So America has become one giant entry level job that no one can get. Because despite what they say, they still want someone that has 3 to 5 years of experience for the entry level job. It's not an entry level job, it is entry level pay. That's the distinction now out there in the real job market. It's not an entry level job, but if they call it that, then they can say, well, this is the pay for the entry level job. Don't complain. Because if you complain, you won't be here tomorrow. So, moving on. The problem isn't just you, it's the system. Employers are flooded with applications and they don't care if you're struggling. They'll pick someone who looks perfect on paper, so if your resume isn't flawless or if you don't look the part in an interview, forget it. Don't show up to job interviews in t shirts. I've done this. And actually, ironically, I did get a job while wearing an Under Armour t-shirt one time just because they thought it was cool that I didn't care about wearing a business casual to the interview. But I'm going to tell you how to fix that. And no, it doesn't involve lying. Oh my gosh. You know, for all of those people over the years that have left these comments on my channel, just fake it till you make it, lie on your resume. These employers right now are checking every single reference on your resume. And the second they find deception on your resume, they are throwing your resume in the trash and you're probably going to get blacklisted at that company. Because there used to be a time where they really didn't check where the workers had the power, right? But now that has been completely flipped. They are looking for minimum wage workers with surgical precision out there. And the second they find a flaw, you're not going to get hired. I mean, I've been applying to thousands of jobs over the last few months. Do you know how many calls back I've gotten? Zero. Because my resume doesn't really align with anything. It's not my work experience at my current company isn't just technology. It's like 5 to 10 different jobs, separate jobs, all cooked into one. And when you ask why it's like this, the management will tell you, we can't give you a promotion, we can't give you a title change, and we're definitely not going to give you more money. But guess what? We will do. In my last review, they reassessed my job to give me even more responsibility on paper with no increase in pay. You don't like it, they'll find someone else pretty quickly because they're going to lowball the next guy. These jobs involve a lot of trickery when they don't even want to advertise the what the job pays, because they know that once they show what the job pays, they're not going to get anyone who's going to show up to that job interview. Just like that lady that I showed you guys a few weeks ago, or maybe a month ago, where she went in to interview for management of a psychiatric facility, right? The guy in the interview says to her, you're going to be on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can't really take any time off. And she throws a low number at him. 40 grand is what she's looking for. The guy looks at her and says to her, I'm thinking more like 25. Oh my God, I would have just wasting your time to go into a job that pays $25,000 a year, which is something that you would pay a kid in high school. Do you know why? Because it's lower than the Arizona minimum wage. And that's in a full-time, probably a salaried position at $25,000. That even hurts my stomach to say that. But it's the reality of these jobs out here and these corporations. You know, and what gets me is that they know what the cost of living looks like. You can't pretend to be ignorant of the cost of life. Life comes with a tax, and it's called living expenses. Whether or not you want to pay those living expenses isn't optional. Rent isn't going to go down just because you're working at Taco Bell. Rent is going to stay exactly where it's at, whether you make $100,000 a year or you make $10,000 a year. And that's where your quality of life diminishes. I've been a person who's had to spend more than 80% of my monthly income while working in retail just on shelter. whilst trying to survive off whatever's left over. And these aren't jobs that you can schedule around. Like I was just talking to someone at the Kroger's, and she said that, well, last week they had me working all mornings, and this week they have me working all closing shifts. You don't get to pick and choose when you work. When you're working these horrible jobs, the number one thing that you can't get used to is the scheduling. All right, let's get back on track here. First, your resume doesn't need to be fancy, just clear. Highlight any skill, even babysitting, volunteering, or helping your neighbor mow their lawn. It shows responsibility. And here's the secret: tailor your resume to each job. If you need someone who can work under pressure, say you've done that. Work fast in a busy kitchen, perfect. You know, when I did this at the university, when I started tailoring jobs to every job that I applied to, HR contacted me and told me that I wasn't allowed to do that. Tailoring jobs specifically, tailoring your resume specifically to a job, they call it fraud. And I was just like, if I don't do that, then I'm not going to get a call back with a resume that's not designed for, let's say, a networking person. If I need to build a resume for desktop support, it's going to be a lot different than networking or server or whatever other job that you have to apply to. You can't apply to be a doctor when you're working as a plumber. You have to tailor these things because that's the way that the automation screens out your resume. If you just put in a generic resume, just generic tech worker with so many years of experience, you're never going to get a job because they have software that actually looks for those keywords. No keywords in your resume, you don't get a call back because they're swamped with resumes. You think you're the only person that needs a job right now? Just look in the mirror, look in the rear view mirror at the millions of other people that are willing to take that desperation job in today's economy. So, for the interview, dress sharp, even if it's for fast food. They'll notice and practice your answers. Smile, even if you're faking it. Oh my God. Why does so much of society wants you to smile? It's like pulling down your pants and then you know what's going to happen, but they want you to smile, even though you're not going to enjoy any part of what's going on down there. But you have to smile. It's like an understood thing in the workplace that if you're not smiling, you're not happy. And if you're not happy, the customers are going to see that you're not happy and they're not going to be happy. So they might buy less or not buy at all because that's what they're expecting. They want you to be smiling at all times so your customers don't understand that you can't afford to eat every night. You're not paying your rent and you have to take the bus or you're walking 5 miles one way to get to work. That's not an exaggeration. I see this cashier walk to work few days a week from rural and southern all the way across the city to the other Kroger's in right on the edge of Chandler. And I'm like, why would this lady do this? It's called poverty, folks. When you're poor, I've had to walk to work. When I worked at the Kroger's up the street, I had to walk to work. I didn't have a car. You're not going to own a car while you're making the minimum wage and having to pay all your own bills. Cars are luxuries. Cars are something you don't get until you make it to a substantial place in your career. Call it career, in your jobs that you in your dead end jobs that are you're going to take for the rest of your life. So here's the thing: most people quit too early. Don't stop applying. Go in person if you can. Employers remember faces more than names on a screen. Show them you're serious. Oh my God, this reminds me so much of that girl who was going door to door and then crying on TikTok because she couldn't get a job and she had 2 college degrees and she spoke like 2 languages or 3 languages. And she got TikTok famous for doing that. She had to humiliate herself on TikTok with paper resumes, going into places that don't want your paper resume. What kind of resume are you going to take into a coffee shop? Honestly, what kind of resume are you going to take to McDonald's? It was all a publicity stunt so that she could get big enough on TikTok so that she could get sponsorship deals. One of her degrees was actually in acting, and she did. She got her video went viral. She got sponsorship deals, and I'm sure right now she's doing TikTok for a living. Well, not much longer, but at least she got somewhere with it. But paper resumes aren't practical in today's society. In fact, the last time I saw a paper application, I was getting a smoothie after working out, and it was just one guy running the whole shop, and you could see the paper resume thing. Like they had them on like a pad, and you were just ripping them off this pad. Just a very generic application. Whether or not you could chew gum and walk at the same time, because you don't really have standards for the minimum wage, or should I say, entry level wages, where they have limited wages, and you're supposed to. And the worst part is that you're supposed to take these job interviews seriously. Like they want you to smile and they want you to walk into a job that's not going. The job is a joke, and I say that because the pay is a joke. When you look at what they're offering, which is minimum wage, and then they ask you this, they have the audacity to ask you this, and they've asked me this question every single resume, or excuse me, every single interview that I've had throughout my entire life has asked this simple question, including all the minimum wage ones. Why do you want to work here? And as much as you want to answer that question honestly, but the number one thing you don't want to be is honest in the resume. I'm not saying lie on your resume, but when it comes to why you want to work here, if they get any type of a feeling that the only reason you're working there is for money, they're not going to hire you. They don't want to hire that guy. They don't want someone working for them that is they want they want desperation. They just don't want to hear it, because the only reason you're applying to that job is out of sheer desperation. Because we know that at the minimum wage, there's certain elements that are included in every single minimum wage job, and that's dignity is not included. And this is true of every single job I've ever had. There's no dignity when they ask you to clean public toilets. And there's no dignity in cleaning the floor or cleaning up anything. If your job involves cleaning, it is a humiliating job, and you're only going to do it until you find something better. And that's another thing. They don't want job hoppers. Yet you can't support yourself on this job, and they are well aware that you can't support yourself on doing this job. I know I've been hiring broccoli haircut guys for years now. They can't afford to live off this job. I know they can't, because they're still living at home, or they're making the transition from working a job that didn't pay them enough, and they're getting ready to move back home, because the only other option is to live with 10 other people in a house where you have zero personal space. And I've had to live in these places with lots of other people in them, and it's not a comfortable place to be, especially if you're working long hours while working in retail for practically nothing, and then you're coming home and the crackhead in the room next to you is cranked up their stereo so loud it's vibrating things in your space, and you can't say anything to them because you don't know how they're going to react. Because sometimes when you tell someone that they can't do something in their own home, like crank the music so loud that you wonder if you'll ever get any sleep ever again while you're living there, they react badly. So I highly do not recommend confronting people, especially rooms that you've rented from a sleazy place like Craigslist. And it's not just the roommates that are sleazy, it's the landlord who counts on people like that to rent the rooms in places so they can continue growing their real estate portfolio, because that's all it is. It's a scam. And you have to participate in that scam in order to be able to have shelter, because if you had money, if you had credit, or you had a family that with money, you wouldn't be living in that place. Those places are designed for people who are on the out financially in every conceivable way. You're you're not doing well, and these people prey on you. It's like predatory lending to people who want to go to school. Student loans aren't a good idea for the vast majority of people who take them out, because you will never be able to repay them back. Because if you're like me, you've never used your education for one damn thing in your entire life. It's a fancy education that you should have never got, because you were always going to be a minimum wage worker. And with that said, I think that's where I'm going to leave this video, because it's absolutely ridiculous that that ChatGPT thinks that it's this easy. So I'm going to leave you guys with the last thing it wrote here. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. Didn't we just acknowledge the fact of how easy it is to get a minimum wage job? But if you're out there thinking no one cares, hear me. I care. I've been there, and you can do this. No, you can't do this. I'm not going to give you guys any false hope here. It says closing, a message of hope. There is no hope out there, people. If you're out there looking for a job right now and you can't find one this year, you're going into a very, very bad year for looking for work, as more and more corporations close down their businesses. And when they close down a business, it means that they couldn't generate enough profit by exploiting you at the minimum wage to keep the doors open, because the last thing they want to do is not have record profits at the end of the year. And guess what? Living wages eat into the salaries of the people who matter. Shareholders, executives, the people who really matter, they're never going to lose. But the people at the bottom, the system is designed for you to lose every single time. It's like buying a lottery ticket and for the rest of your life, and you never win anything. You always lose with bottom level jobs.